a race in the Tampa Bay area, you get infiltrated with different types of media and marketing to expand out to the voters to let them know about your position. What do y'all think is the most effective means of campaign material or media to reach out to like younger voters or to the independent voters?
Well, we spend so much on television advertising that's probably pretty effective, but it's also the most expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, but it works, or they wouldn't do it. You know, I mean, the governor's race was unbelievable. I mean, it was constant. It was absolutely constant here in this market. For those of you who do not live here, you could not turn on the TV without seeing constant commercials. So I mean, it's expensive.
I think there's a danger too in relying too much on social media, because we found at USF, and then others wrote about it after this, like the last election, a lot of people, of course Facebook's kind of old news, but a lot of people were defriending people that got too intrusive into their private Facebooks, and the same thing is true on all of it. I think you can offend people. I don't want to use the analogy of a street side preacher, because they do reach some people, but you got to think about how many do you alienate. And I think social media, of course, I come down, and Sarah will attest to it, I don't want anybody turning in anything to me that doesn't have visuals in it anymore. So the more that your Twitters have photos or something interesting, I think the better you grab your generation's attention.
Now, how do you address, I haven't had television in over a year, and so last year's election cycle was a peaceful break from TV ads for me. Netflix doesn't have them, fortunately, yet. So how do we address that? Because I know a lot of college students and younger people, we're trying to kill off the duopoly of cable. And by doing that, we're on YouTube and other places. So.
Well, the reality is then that is going to be an issue, and your candidates are going to have to realize that they are reaching this segment as opposed to this segment when they go with that type of advertising. It's a really good point. How you do it?
Well, we put a lot of our stuff on YouTube, you know, we do. Our station puts a lot of stuff on YouTube. And the best thing is for you all to pass it to others and get it out there. You have to, it's a multiplier effect in social media. You pass it on, and then somebody else passes it on, passes it on, passes it on.
But the truth, for those of us who love politics for one reason or another, we're into it all the time. We're paying attention all the time. We're reading everything all the time, and we're talking to people about it all the time. But the reality is that there is that segment, and then there's another segment that's not going to pay attention until the very end. It's going to be the last week. It's going to be the last couple days. You know, it's always shocking to me because I sort of live in that world, and you guys probably live in that world, and you live in that world, and then I'll, you know, go get my hair cut or something, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, what's that? Who's running? Who's in the governor's race?" I mean, and that's just the reality. Is that, you know, if you're not into it, if you're not in it, if you're not watching, you know, network television or cable television, you might not be paying attention until the end. And so that's why those last couple days are so important.
We call those casual voters in our trade, political sciences, casual voters, and they are swayed the most by friends and neighbors. That's why when you walk doors, not only do you lose weight, but you also can really pull somebody across the line that maybe wouldn't have thought about it because you took the time to come to the door. And let me tell you, older people love your age group coming to the door. It gives them energy. It makes them feel good about the next generation. So I never discount door-to-door stuff for these casual voters.
Did you notice Marco Rubio door walking in Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
Already.
What are your thoughts on negative ads and commercials? Do they work? What are the metrics? What do the numbers show?
Yeah, they work. They do work.
And I mean, what?
They don't work with your group, by the way. They don't work with your group very well.
I mean, I think that she's got more of the stats than I do, but I watch what's out there, and if they didn't work, people wouldn't use them.
And some people, here's also, what you may think is a truth ad because you like a candidate and you're ad slams the other one, you think, yeah, that's truth. Let's just get everything out about Hillary Cash or whatever else. And you think what to you would be truthful is to somebody else on the other side highly partisan and highly negative. So negative is in the eyes of the beholder. But what we do know is that, and we saw this in the primaries in Florida, the more negatives, and you saw this even in 2012 presidential, the more negatives from each side, back to back on television. I mean, what happens? That casual voter says, hey, neither one of these characters is worth voting for. And so it used to be the old saying was
Stop
that,
paying attention.
yeah,
Just
that,
washes right over you.
that negative just really drives somebody in one direction or another. That only works if one candidate has more money to spend on ads than the other one. But now there's such parity in our state. Both parties spending millions, $20 million on ads last year. And when it's equal and it's back to back, particularly if I'm and we know that income is going to be a big issue this next election. So if I'm a low income person and I want to hear somebody tell me some specifics about how they're going to help me improve my economic status, but all I hear, either one of them is bashing each other, and I don't hear either of them relating to me about the big issue, that's when I just say, forget it, I'm not voting.
Although we did see waves, like in the governor's race. I mean, that was the most recent race, and that's interesting that, there was a lot of negative, and Dr. MacManus and I actually spent a lot of time talking about that, and how, what she was hearing from her students about how turned off they were about the negative ads, and yet we did see sort of waves of, it would be negative, 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 and then there would be this sort of wave of Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm nice, and I have children, and
dogs.
I have dogs, and I have a family, and you would see that, and they would both do that, and then it would go back to the other one, and so it would be sort of punctuated by these, what I call Mr. Nice Guy.